And yes, you're exactly right. The Muslim Brotherhood, they fear, because if they ever allowed a democratic election, they'd get a substantial vote, maybe a majority. So they have to be crushed, controlled. And Hamas is, an offshoot of them. So they hate Hamas. And besides that, they just don't want Palestinians there. The idea that the Arab leadership likes the Palestinians is a joke. They can't stand them. They're an irritant. They wish they'd kind of go away because they incite their own populations, and they got to protect themselves from their own populations. A major problem in dictatorships. So yes, they lined up with the United States, which happens to mean with Israel in this case. But so did Jordan. So did. In fact, there's a block of the leadership of Jordan. The dictatorships that line up with the United States, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, to some extent Kuwait, are pretty much a bloc. Now it's split. Like within the Saudi ruling family, there have been some really strong statements of opposition to what Turki al-Faisal made a very powerful statement. We're all Palestinians. We should go to martyrdom to fight the Israeli onslaught and so on. So it's not easy to keep control, but this goes way back. It goes back long before Israel was an issue. Yeah. So if you go back to say 1958, it's President Eisenhower, he raised with his staff the question, why is there a campaign of hatred against us among the populations in the Arab world? Not the governments, they're okay, but the populations. And the National Security Council, is the highest planning body, released a study which said there's a perception in the Arab world that the United States opposes democracy and development and supports harsh and brutal dictatorships, and does so because we want to get their oil. And then they said, well, the perception's sort of accurate, and that's what we ought to be doing, so okay, let's go ahead. Israel was not an issue at the time. In fact, that was right after Eisenhower had ordered Israel and England and France out of the Sinai. So, he kind of, I suppose he expected, there'd be some gratitude in the Arab world. Well, there isn't. Yeah. There was a campaign of hatred. But they don't care. I mean, of course they care, but it's kind of like a minor issue. As long as the dictatorships can control their populations, it doesn't matter if they hate us. Yeah. The world's ruled by force, after all, not by love.
Mm-hmm. So we're a few minutes away from the inauguration of Barack Obama as the next president of the United States. And there are some who knew him in private before he ran for office. He was friends with apparently Edward Said and Rashid Khalidi, who say that Barack Obama really understands that the occupation is the source of the conflict. And yet, everything we've seen from him publicly so far has been just unrestrained support for Israel and exclusive concern for the security of Israelis. Yet, you see that Israel tied its military operation and made sure that it was going to end before Barack Obama came into office. Do you have any suspicions on whether Obama would be different on this issue?
The fact that Ed Said and Rashid Khalidi were friends and he was nice to them and so on, what that tells you is that Barack Obama is a politician. He's nice to everybody. In fact, we just saw this on his trip to Israel last June or July. Shimon Peres said that Barack Obama told him he loved Peres's peace initiative. Bibi Netanyahu said to the press, he loves my position, which is drive everybody out of the country. Yeah, sure, that's what he is. He's a consummate politician. What we know is his actual positions. They're on his website. In fact, I read an article a year ago just running through his website. It's worse than Bush, And since then, it got much worse. It got so extreme that his party managers had to retract publicly what he said. You may recall at the AIPAC speech, he just kind of went crazy. He said Jerusalem has to be the permanent and undivided capital of Israel. Well, that's way beyond what any American president has said, and obviously they can't take that position. So the campaign had to say, well, the words didn't really mean what they meant, and so on. And if you look at his advisors, half of them they mostly come straight out of the offshoots of the Israeli lobby. Dennis Ross, Daniel Kretzer, who's the most moderate of them, was apparently helped write that speech, the AIPAC speech. And so it goes down the line. Hillary Clinton, we know. He himself, the reason Israel stopped, it was predicted, I mean, I predicted, others did, that the invasion would stop right before the inauguration. But it has nothing to do with being afraid of Obama. What they were concerned with is that if this massacre is going on during the inauguration, Obama's going to have to say something about it. Yeah. Up until then, it's just silent. You know, we only have one president. I can talk about anything else, but I can't talk about this. And that kind of sold in the press. But, you know, when you get to the inauguration, Israel's, you know, using white phosphorus, it's bombing UN buildings, destroying schools, mosques. You see pictures of tortured children. I mean, he's not going to be able to be silent. Yeah. So therefore, it was predictable that they'd make sure to cut it off right before the inauguration. So then what you can say is, look how wonderful it is, ceasefire, troops withdrawing, everybody lives in peace. Yeah. I mean, look, the whole thing is a very carefully calculated PR operation. And it's not concealed. If you read the Israeli press, they pointed out that we've carefully planned this one. It's not going to be like Lebanon. We learned the lessons. We're going to plan both the military actions and the propaganda actions. Mm-hmm. No, it's not called propaganda in Israel. It's called explanation. Yeah. That's the word for their own propaganda. So we have to explain to the world that everything we're doing is right and just. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of upset that the operation didn't work. I mean, it kind of worked in the even in the United States. In the U.S., it worked in the media and in Congress, but not among the public. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, even, I mean, the U.S. is a very, ideologically, a very carefully controlled society. So in most of the world, you can see what's going on live, daily, on television in Al Jazeera, which is the one television channel that's working there. You know. But the United States is carefully insulated from that. I mean, maybe in Dearborn you can pick it up or something, but we don't allow ourselves to, you know, be subverted by the truth. You know. But even with the self-censorship, I mean, enough is coming through so that, and the journalists know it. I mean, you read the reports. I mean, even try to keep control, but it's hard to when you get some picture of what's going on.
Too much to keep down.
It's too much to keep down. So something gets through, and they're concerned. Mm-hmm. I mean, Israeli hawks are writing in the Israeli press that, you know, we blew it. I mean, we're going to lose even the American public, you know, which is dangerous. You know.
So on the one hand, we are beginning to see this shift in American public discourse among the population. You even have former President Jimmy Carter coming out with, you know, a book criticizing U.S. support for Israel. You have relatively mainstream political scientists like Mearsheimer and Walt who are primarily concerned about U.S. power talking about this openly. And you even have shows as mainstream as The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, which had excellent coverage on the situation in Gaza. Yet on the other hand, in terms of the actual situation on the ground, it's worsening by the day, and to use your words, we are witnessing the death of a nation. What can be done to bridge that gap? We're beginning to see a shift here, but this is not being reflected at all in official policy. Do you think that we actually are in a position where we might be beginning to penetrate actual policy?
Well, I mean, the fact is, Israel apart, there's a vast gap between public opinion and public policy on all sorts of issues. Mm-hmm.